Kashilale, and welcome to the Awam Tibetan Buddhist Institute, our Sunday meditation hour and Dharma talk this morning. Today we're continuing the talk related to the preliminary practices, so we will be going through those, and we will begin here by actually going through the preliminary practices as a practice. And as a part of that, I just wanted to note that sometimes we do these a little bit differently in different ways. We have different texts that we use, and so they're organized in slightly different ways. But we begin here with the conch, inviting all the Buddhas and Bodhisattvas to join us this morning. Also mention that those of you who are watching online can get a copy of the text on our website at awaminstitute.org. You can go to the resources page and you can download this there. So we begin now with the blessing mantra. Om Sambara Sambara Vimana Sara Maha Sambaba Hum Pit Soha. Om Sambara Sambara Vimana Sara Maha Sambaba Hum Pit Soha. Om Sambara Sambara Bhimana Sara Maha Sambhava Hum Pit Soha. Homage to Samantabhadra and Samantabhadri, because I suffer due to my own actions and I now have this precious human life without knowing when I will die, I will now engage in virtuous actions for the benefit of all sentient beings with joy and devotion. Therefore, I take refuge in the Buddha, the Dharma, and the Sangha most excellent, in order to enable all sentient beings to attain enlightenment. I take refuge in the Buddha, the Dharma, and the Sangha most excellent, in order to enable all sentient beings to attain enlightenment. I take refuge in the Buddha, the Dharma, and the Sangha most excellent, in order to enable all sentient beings to attain enlightenment. May all mother sentient beings, boundless as the sky, have happiness and the causes of happiness. May they be liberated from suffering and the causes of suffering. May they never be separated from the happiness that is free from sorrow. May they rest in equanimity, free from attachment and aversion. May all mother sentient beings, boundless as the sky, have happiness and the causes of happiness. May they be liberated from suffering and the causes of suffering. May they never be separated from the happiness that is free from sorrow. And may they rest in equanimity, free from attachment and aversion. May all mother sentient beings, boundless as the sky, have happiness and the causes of happiness. May they be liberated from suffering and the causes of suffering. May they never be separated from the happiness that is free from sorrow. And may they rest in equanimity, free from attachment and aversion. Vajrasattva and Vajratopa appear above me, purifying me and all beings and phenomena with nectar from the place of their union. So now we recite the 100-syllable mantra on page 2. Om Benza Sato Samaya Manupalaya Benza Sato Tenopa Jishtadiro Mevawa Sutokayo Mevawa Supokayo Mevawa Anurakto Mevawa Sarvasiddhi Me Prayata Sarva Karma Sutame Chitam Shriya Kuruhum Ha 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 ho Bhagavan Sawatatakata Benza Mame Munsa Benza Bhava Maha Samaya Sato Om Benza Sato Samaya Manupalaya Benza Sato Tenopa Tishtadrito Me Bhava Sutokayo Me Bhava Supokayo Me Bhava Anurakto Me Bhava Sarvasiddhi Me Prayata Sarva Karma Sutame Chitam Shriya Guru Ha 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 ho Bhagavan Sarvatatakata Benza Mame Munsa Benzi Bhava Mahasamaya Sato Om Benza Sato Samaya Manupalaya Benza Sato Tenopa Tishta Drido Me Bawa Suto Kayo Me Bawa Supo Kayo Me Bawa Anurakto Me Bawa Sarva Sevi Me Prayatsa Sarva Karma Sutta Me Titim Shriya Kuruham Ha 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 Ho Bhagavan Sarva Tata Gata Benza Mame Munza Benzi Bawa Mahasamaya Sato Mandala offering. Om Ahom. In the Dharmakaya pure realm, Dharmadhatu equality, the realms of the five Sambhogakaya families self-appear unobstructedly, along with the array of Namanakaya pure realms that fill all of space. All this I offer as Samattabhadra's clouds of great bliss. Om Ratna Mandala Puta Mega Samudra Saparana Samaya Om. Seven limb prayer. Whatever merit I have gathered through prostrations, offering, confession, rejoicing, requesting, and praying for the sake of the enlightenment of all sentient beings, all this I dedicate. Home. In the northwest of the land of Oregon, in the heart of a lotus flower, endowed with the most marvelous attainments, you are renowned as the lotus born, surrounded by many hosts of dakinis. Following in your footsteps, I pray to you, come resting with your grace, Guru Pema Siddhi Home. Home, in the northwest of the land of Oregon, in the heart of a lotus flower, endowed with the most marvelous attainments, you are renowned as the lotus born, surrounded by many hosts of dakinis. Following in your footsteps, I pray to you, come and bless me with your grace, Guru Pema Siddhi Home. Home, in the northwest of the land of Oregon, in the heart of a lotus flower, endowed with the most marvelous attainments, you are renowned as a lotus born, surrounded by many hosts of dakinis. Following in your footsteps, I pray to you, bless me with your grace, Guru Pema Siddhi Home. Mantra. Om Ahom Benza Guru Pema Siddhi Home. Om Ahom Benza Guru Pema Siddhi Home. Om Ahom Benza Guru Pema Siddhi Home. Om Benza Guru Pema Siddhi Home. Om Ahom 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 Benza Guru Pema Siddhi Home. Om ahum Benzagur open Mizidi 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 home. Continue at the top of page 3. Light radiates from the Guru's 4 places into my 4 places, purifying my body, speech, mind, and all subtle obscurations, granting the 4 empowerments, and planting the 4 seeds. The Guru dissolves into light and merges inseparably into myself. So dissolve visualization, just rest in the natural state of pure awareness. And if any distractions arise, thoughts and so forth, just let them go and refocus your attention. We'll meditate for about 5 minutes. So we've been talking about the preliminary practices, which is what we just did. And so I wanted to do just a quick review before we go on from where we were before. So we started primarily with the what is really part of the original of the preliminary practices of the four thoughts that turn the mind. And so in the four thoughts that turn the mind, there are four particular issues which we are told to contemplate so that we understand those. And the primary purpose of those is to help motivate us to do the practice and to attain enlightenment, ultimately. And so as a part of that, we talk about suffering. As I mentioned, the term suffering is a usual translation of the term dukkha in Sanskrit, but it actually refers to something much broader than we would usually think of when we think of suffering. Suffering we would think of perhaps as physical pain and mental anguish kinds of things. And it includes those kind of things, but it really is, like I said, much broader, a sense of dissatisfaction or discontent. You know, things just aren't as good as they could be, kind of a sense. And that really is more of what the Buddhism is focused on than actual physical pain, somewhat more mental anxiety. But physical pain, research shows, yeah, it can help, but it doesn't tend to just eliminate physical pain completely. And so that's one. And then the second one is karma, our actions, or more specifically, our intentional actions. And there are some kinds of actions that are particularly problematic, and they're described in different kinds of ways. One of the more basic ones is the three poisons. And the kind of generic version of those is that we avoid attachment and we avoid aversion and we deal with our own fundamental ignorance about the true nature of things. And so, and there are lots of other individual things as a part of that. And then the next part is that because we have this life, which is considered to be very precious, so precious human life, that again is the opportunity that we have. So we have to be aware of the opportunity as a part of that. And then without knowing when we will die, everything is impermanent. And so that then is something to help give us an incentive to do something about that. From there, then, we went on to the uncommon Mindro, or preliminary practices. And so with that, we start off with the refuge. And we talked about the refuge tree and the various symbolic parts of the structure that are involved in that. And part of it is to visualize that and remember that as you're reciting the refuge prayer. There's lots of different refuge prayers, and so the one that we recite here is just one of those. But the symbolism is there. Each lineage has their own variation of this. The major lineages of the Nyingmas and the Gelugpas and the Kagyus and the Sakyas, for example, each of those, the Bon, the Jonang, I mean, there's lots of different branches of Buddhism, but everybody has their own version of this, and then within that there are subcategories as well. So the next thing is the actual refuge, taking refuge. And I did mention earlier on about putting the hands together in the lotus position. I wanted to just mention one other thing associated with that, and that's the symbolism of the lotus itself. And the symbolism is something that is very predominant in the Indian tradition. Lots of lodi grow in India areas and some surrounding areas of that as well. And of course they tend to grow in ponds that have mud on the bottom. And so the roots are down there in the mud and they grow up through the water and then they blossom up above the water itself. And so the symbolism is that the mud symbolizes all of the problems, the suffering, if you will, in our life. But the flower is a beautiful flower, and so it manifests. And so the idea is that through the process of attaining enlightenment, liberation, awakening, whichever word that you prefer to use there, that is the symbol of the the lotus is the symbol of that experience. And so that's what we're doing when we do that. Now, I think I did mention before that when we're doing refuge, in some cases people will take the folded hands, put it up above the head, and then taking refuge in the Buddha, the Dharma, and the Sangha. Well, look, there's different forms of actual refuge prayers as well here I'll talk about in a minute. Some people don't, so you can do that either way, but that's something to be aware of as a part of that. In terms of, again, the picture then, and doing this, it can be difficult for some people to keep that in their mind as they're reciting the text. You may have to read the text if you haven't memorized it. So one of the things that's helpful is to actually memorize the text. Now, if you're going from one place to another, or even one practice to another, sometimes, as I said, the text can be different. But it does help to do some practice with just observing and visualizing the text. If you get a picture, and we have a picture of that, very tiny one, but we have a picture in the prayer book that you could use, or you can get them on the internet. And just having that picture and practicing with that. Look at the picture and then look away, try to visualize it in your mind. Go back and you can pick out just parts. You can start with whoever happens to be the central figure of the picture that you're using. In our case, it is Padmasambhava. So you memorize the picture of Padmasambhava, and then you kind of go outward from that to different parts until you can get a complete image in your mind. And then just a quick glance will be enough to remind you of the entire image of that. So that's one of the ways that you can do it. Or there's, if you have even still more difficulty, there is what is called a flash form of practice. You do a quick glance and then you recite, and then you do a quick glance and then you recite, and so forth. And that could be a good way to do it in the beginning, particularly when you're just learning to do these things. At home, you can do that. There's no specific pace, like when we're doing them in a group, you can't just stop and do that very well. But those are all things that you can do to help with that. So then, another part of this, traditionally in learning this, is to do prostrations. And there are different forms of prostrations. Again, we tend to do it with the cup. We start with the cupped hands at our heart, and then, as I said, we raise them above, and then the forehead, throat, and heart as a part of that as we recite the actual part. Depends on the text, but the part that says, I take refuge in the Buddha, the Dharma, and the Sangha. So you're touching the forehead, I take refuge in the Buddha, and the throat, and the Dharma, and then the Sangha at the heart. And so those are the customary ways to do that. And the way that we're taught to do this is by doing this prostration, and it's a full, all-out prostration, flat on the floor, okay? Your hands are lying out there above you, and so forth. And some people actually curve their hands up above. Now imagine the floor is here, and they curve their hands above their head and behind them, and finish the prayer as they go ahead and get back up. So customarily, you start with that, reciting that one line, and then whatever other lines there are, you do as you go ahead and get down on the floor. Now, not everybody physically can do that. And so there is another version of that, which is a little bit easier for a lot of us, and that is a version of this which is called a half prostration, which is also acceptable, where instead of getting flat out on the floor, you get on your hands and knees and then touch your head to the floor. So it has those 5 parts, both knees, both hands, and your head. Okay, so all together as a part of that. You may not be able to do that either. Sometimes, for example, when you're not all spaced out the way we are here, with our social distancing, when we have a little bit of room, we have more room to do that. But a lot of times it's a little bit crowded. The chairs are right next to each other, and the ones in front are very close, and there's not room to actually do that kind of a prostration. It's acceptable to just bow down and do it. Or if for physical reasons you can't really get down on the floor and get back up in that way, you can do it the same way. And so any of those ways are acceptable. when we have a visiting Lama who's teaching, sometimes they will just say, that's okay, you don't have to do that. Okay, just sit down. And that's acceptable too. If they ask you to do that, then we do it that way. Welcome. And so what we're doing as a part of this is we're purifying our karma. And there's a number of ways to purify karma. We'll talk about another one, the Bodhisattva practice, here in a little bit. But we're doing that through this gesture to the Buddha, the Dharma, and the Sangha. And so we purify that, but especially we're purifying our pride. And that's the whole idea of being willing to get down on the floor and prostrate to a teacher or to a statue of the Buddha and those kind of things, is we're acknowledging our dedication to that individual or to the symbol of that individual. And so if you can't do that, and I've heard stories of people who went to teachings and refused to do a prostration, okay, that's a little bit of arrogance going on if you refuse to do that. Now, if you can't do it physically or it's too crowded, all of those kind of things, that's a whole different thing. But if you're just not willing to do it, then there's an issue, and you should deal with that issue. Okay? And there are ways to do that as well. So then we maintain the visualization as we do that, and so then I take refuge in the Buddha, the Dharma, and the Sangha, most excellent, as I've been saying here. But I mentioned there's really 4 different kinds of refuge that we can do. This one is called the outer refuge. Okay? And so this is to the principal ones. The Buddha is the teacher. The Dharma are his teachings. And the Sangha is the collection, the individuals who are participating in that. So the Buddha refers here to Shakyamuni Buddha, or Siddhartha Gautama, who was the person who became the Buddha. And so after 6 years of study, we are told, according to legend and practice and so forth, during which he engaged in very extreme forms of asceticism, trying to find a way to be liberated from all of the forms of dukkha, suffering, and so forth. And then finally he was dissatisfied with that too and decided to go it alone. And so we are told that he went and he sat under the Bodhi tree, a Bodhi leaf over here right above the wheels. And so that's a fairly large one. They come in large sizes and smaller sizes based on different varieties of the tree. But the idea is he sat there on his own until he finally achieved what he considered to be liberation as a part of that. And then he taught others for a period of 45 years, according to the legend at least. Okay? So quite a long time. A lot longer than I was a professor. So the Dharma, the teachings, are known as sutras. And so those are the teachings of the Buddha, or at least attributed to the Buddha, and in a few cases to some of his closest disciples. But usually the text itself will talk about that, if that is the case, who the individual is. Sangha is basically a group of practitioners, and there's lots of different ways to slice the pie here. So different groups of practitioners as a part of that. One of those groups will be all of the Buddhas and the Bodhisattvas, okay, in the image that we have here. So we have the Buddha surrounded by other Bodhisattvas, in this case on the one side. The Buddhas on this side, we have the Bodhisattvas on the other side in this particular image. But that is one of the forms of a Sangha. Okay? And then another one would be the Vidyadharas, the Lamas, and other great masters would be included, and those are often the ones that are up right above the form of the Buddha or the central figure, whichever one that happens to be as a part of that. And the word Vidyadharas is used in different ways. It's a word that means awareness holders, but it's more commonly used in our tradition, the Nyingma tradition, than in other ones, although it is used sometimes there. And Another word associated with that is rigzen, which means always in pure awareness. And so when we talk about it, particularly in the Dzogchen part of our tradition, we're staying in that state of pure awareness at all times. Not that other things aren't happening that we're aware of, but we're also always aware of that aspect of it. And so there are different levels of that. I won't go into that right now, but those are a part of another group then. And then a third group would be the monastic community. All of the monks and the nuns are also considered to be a sangha. Another one would then be all other practitioners. Us, everybody from every group around Tucson, every group around the country, the world, we are all collectively together, also a sangha. And so there's various ways that that can be done. And even within a group, so for us, so we have a group of practitioners here today, so we form a sangha. But we're not the whole sangha of the Awam Tibetan Buddhist Institute. There are a lot of others here who aren't with us today. Okay? Either practicing at home or maybe they're doing other kinds of things. And so they are also a part of the Awam Tibetan Buddhist Institute Sangha. Okay? If we have a teaching and an empowerment, let's say Jigme Lodro came or Khenchen Lama came and gave an empowerment, the people who are together in that empowerment also are considered to be a sangha. So you can see there's lots of different ways that that word can be used to describe a group of participants. So keep that in mind as we're thinking about other individuals. So that's the outer refuge. The second type of refuge is the inner refuge. And that is taking refuge in the guru, the yidam, in the dakini, or sometimes the dharma protector, or dharma pala. And so sometimes it's given as three, and then it's called the three roots, or sometimes it's including all four of those categories, and then it's called the four roots. Simple enough. But it's the inner refuge. And so because the historical Buddha is no longer with us, what we're doing here is substituting the guru as the teacher. Okay, so Shakyamuni Buddha was the original teacher in terms of the historical Buddha, but since he's not there, people like myself, people like Khenchen Lama, people like Jigme Lodro Rinpoche, Lama Gersim, and many others are considered to be teachers as well. And so the yidam then, the second part, is the deity, is the term that we often use for that. And that can be confusing to people in the beginning because the word deity is literally a synonym with a god. But Buddhists are not gods. And the deities are not. They are Buddhas. And so we divide that into two different groups of individuals, of beings, if you will. And so we differentiate those, but the words actually mean the same thing in a literal way, except for that distinction of being a Buddha. So that is something that people sometimes are confused about. And so it's a form of a meditational Buddha, would be a way to think about that. They may have been a human being at one point. Padmasambhava was a human being at one point. And then they became recognized as a fully awakened Buddha. And so they are a manifestation of that enlightened mind. We view them that way. A little bit like archetypes, as discussed by Carl Jung, if you're familiar with him, the psychologist. And so he talked about those as kind of universal patterns and images that are a part of our collective unconsciousness. And so they represent these symbolic characteristics. And so Chinrezig, for example, is the male deity of compassion. Okay, we don't have Chinrezig up here. Tara, we do have Tara, a female deity of compassion, which we have over here, is a male deity of wisdom. And Prajnaparamita, which we don't have, is a female deity of wisdom. And so that's the idea. They have specific characteristics. Now, they overlap a lot. So white Tara and green Tara have that universal compassion element among them, but white Tara also has an element that emphasizes long life. And so sometimes there are multiple elements, symbols that they represent as a part of that. And then the third one is the Dakini. And Dakini is a little bit more difficult to describe because they come in multiple forms as a part of that. And they're nearly always female in form, although sometimes they are described as being male, but it's really pretty rare. And usually when they do that, they refer to them as dakas instead of dakinis. And so when you go pick up one of our keys to go to a restroom, they would say daka and dakini on them. That's where those terms come from. But the word means sky dancer or something like that. It gets translated slight variations there. I kind of like that one. But they're also considered to be messengers. They help bring information to us to help us in our practice. So they may appear to us during a practice. It's kind of like a daydream for most people. Sometimes they look more literal than that. And so they then can share things, give us information that would help us in some kind of stumbling blocks that we may be facing in the process of doing our practices. Another form, the fourth form, though, are these protectors, the Dharmapala. These are non-human beings which take a variety of forms as a part of that. They're mostly very wrathful in appearance, and in this case they're more male than female, so the reverse of the dakinis. And they're said to protect the Dharma from sources trying to destroy it or that intend to harm practitioners as a part of that. So when we're doing a practice, for example, these would be things that appear in your mind that are distractions, keeping you away from doing an effective practice. So these are all viewed as being a part of or in our mind. Okay? They're not a physical manifestation of something. They're a mental manifestation. But if you look, where is it? Oh, right above the tanka over here, you can see a small picture. This is a Dharmapala over here. If you look over on the middle of that wall, the same picture. If you look in the middle of the wall back here, there's another one. And if you look in the middle of the one over here, there's another one. So we've got protectors in the four directions, which is a classical way of doing it, especially in retreat. But we've done it in terms of our main room here. And so that is a part of that as well. So they're there to protect us from other things that are here to cause us harm as a part of that. And so Mahakala is one that is very common. Yamantaka is another one. Ekajati, which is the one that we have here, which is the one most common in the Nyingma tradition, in particular related to Dzogchen. But there are other ones of these. Okay, the third kind of refuge then, I'll talk a little bit about. So we had the outer, the inner, but the third one is called secret refuge. And this gets expressed in a couple of different ways. But one of those is the Dharmakaya, Sambhogakaya, and Nirmanakaya. And that's the one that I want to talk about here. Kaya literally means body. So we're talking about three bodies, or some just say three kayas, if you know what the term means, or three forms of a Buddha. That's what those refer to. And so we take refuge in all three of those forms. There are other kayas besides those. So there's a fourth and a fifth one, and actually there's another sixth one that is sometimes used instead of the fourth and fifth one. So the different ways that they get mixed. But the most common are those three kayas. So Dharmakaya means truth body, literally. It refers to the absolute nature of things in terms of Buddha, but without a form. So this picture right here is a symbolic representation of that. But there is no actual body. So it's kind of contradictory in a way. It, again, is something that is in our mind. And so this is including ideas of existence and non-existence. Things like those are concepts. And so it transcends us. We sometimes refer to it as transcendent wisdom. So when we recite the Heart Sutra, for example, that's a classical case of a transcendent view of things, where it's not this, not that, not something else, because it's beyond that, because those are terms. And the terms can get in our way. It's a real common thing to happen in meditation practice. We start using a concept of something or other about our practice, and that becomes the object of our practice. When that happens, we're in trouble, okay? Go talk to your Lama and tell them that's what's going on, what do I do? And they can give you some assistance in helping with that. So everything manifests or arises from our mind. But it is also referred to, Dharmakaya is also referred to sometimes as Rigpa, pure awareness. So that is the awareness before we become aware of things. It's a ability to be aware. Okay? It's the very root nature of our mind in the Buddhist tradition. That is the most fundamental aspect of mind, is being able to be aware. Or sometimes it says consciousness, being conscious at all. If we have no consciousness, what's left? Dead body? That's about it. Okay, so we have to be conscious in order to really be a sentient being. It's also sometimes referred to as Buddha nature, that heart essence that everybody is said to have in the Buddhist tradition that allows us to actually become a Buddha. And so there's other terms that are sometimes used as a part of that as well. The second term is Sambhogakaya. Sambhogakaya literally means enjoyment body. Kind of an odd term in my mind in terms of explaining that, but it's referring to the play of energy. So Sambhogakaya really is referring to the energy aspect of a Buddha and their ability to do things, not just be there, but actually do things as a part of that. And so these are manifestations of our mind. I mentioned just pure awareness is just being able to be aware before you're aware of things. The play aspect, the Sambhogakaya aspect, is being aware of things. And so those work together. You can't be aware of things if you can't be aware at all. You can't be aware at all if there's nothing to be aware of. Okay? So they are two things at one level, and yet they go together. They work together as one. We call it one taste. Okay? So that's a very important aspect of that. The 5 Buddha families, for example, that we sometimes talk about are considered to be Sambhogakaya forms. The various deity forms, we're talking about deities. Deity forms that we use for meditation are all considered to be in the Sambhogakaya form. Sometimes we talk about them, especially the more wrathful forms, we talk about that they are in Sambhogakaya garments. Well, no, those would be more the peaceful ones. Sambhogakaya forms of garments and so forth that are basically based on the image in India of royalty. So they have these fancy kinds of things that they would wear as a part of that. And so that's some of the symbolism that are associated with these for meditation purposes. And then we have the Nirmanakaya. The Nirmanakaya literally means form body. Originally, form body had a different name. It was called Rupakaya, which included both the Sambhogakaya and the Nirmanakaya together as one. So sometimes you'll still see that term used, but it refers really to the literal physical body, physical existence of a Buddha. So Shakyamuni Buddha, the historical Buddha, lived, was a historical Buddha. Padmasambhava lived, was a historical Buddha. And so people that are manifest or achieve that state have that Nirmanakaya physical form as a Buddha. But it's also not actually limited to a human form. They can also take other kinds of forms that is described in some texts, and so they could appear as in an animal form. They could appear in a dakini form that we were talking about. There are some that say they could even appear as a rock or something like that. And there are ways that they could then help us in our practice. We see the rock, and all of a sudden we have this insight about our practice and so forth. So those kind of things are said also to be a part of that. So that is the secret refuge, the three kayas: Dharmakaya, Sambhogakaya, and Nirmanakaya. And the fourth one is considered to be the most secret. Okay? So we add the most secret refuge to that. And that is our heart essence. I mentioned before Buddha nature. And so the Buddha nature aspect of that, our innate nature that is sometimes referred to. Some also call it the universal teacher of all beings. And so we may have a teacher. Khenchen Lama is my root teacher, and so he's my teacher. But I also have other teachers as well. Garchen Rinpoche is one of my teachers. And so I have the various teachers that I've gone to for different empowerments or teachings and those kind of things. But at my heart, it's also Padmasambhava. Okay? And if somebody doesn't really feel like they can commit to a particular individual as a teacher, and that's very common, especially early, because it's best not to commit to somebody early on and then regret having done that later on when you find, oh, well, that's not really the best match for me. It's better to wait. In fact, some of the teachings, like in Words of My Perfect Teacher, say wait 12 years at least before you pick somebody to be your root teacher as a part of that. But it can work out. You can get to know somebody much earlier than that as well, as long as you've had an opportunity to be really exposed to them and not just imagining what it would be like for them to be your teacher. But it is said that Padmasambhava can be the teacher of all of us in that sense, the universal teacher as a part of that. And there's lots of other terms that can be used in terms of this Buddha nature and this most ultimate form of the innate essence, if you will. So this is also the luminous nature of our mind, the pure, undefiled mind, and the natural and true state of mind. That is the emptiness, which has various kinds of meanings, so we won't go into that right now. But it's also the ability to attain Buddhahood. So all of those kind of come together to give an essence of what it is like. And that's why with transcendent wisdom, we can't really say, because it really is an embodiment of these things beyond what terminology can actually say for us. So it's a little bit like the Dharmakaya, but it's our most transcendent nature, if you will. So the first is the most common of all of those. The second one is fairly common. The other two are much more rare and primarily used in terms of Tantra at the completion stage part of Tantra practice and or in Dzogchen. So the prayer, the refuge prayer that we're addressing here goes on to say, in order to enable all sentient beings to attain enlightenment. Okay? So that's one of in the Tibetan Buddhist tradition. Part of what we're talking about here is this idea of bodhicitta. Bodhicitta, the mind of enlightenment, but it's got two parts, a relative part and an ultimate part. And in that relative part, we could summarize it by saying loving kindness and compassion, but it's also a sense of altruism, of doing things to benefit others. Our goal is that we want all beings to achieve this form of enlightenment. Okay? And so that's what's being referred to here. So our purpose is more than just self-liberation, liberation for ourselves,
but we want to liberate all beings, all sentient beings, aiding them as best we can. I mean, there are lots of sentient beings. Even if you limit that to just human sentient beings, that's a lot. But if we expand that up to any other beings that may have the ability to experience sentient acknowledgement of happiness, unhappiness, suffering, those kind of things, then that's a much more vast area, and certainly there are limits to what we can do. But the key for us is to set that altruistic intention. Okay? Intention, as I mentioned, related to karma, it's our intention much more so than the actual action that we engage in. And the same is true here. In terms of bodhicitta, it is our intention that is most important. Doesn't mean the actions aren't important, but it means that the intention is the most important as a part of that. And then at the very end of that, there's this little thing in parentheses that says 3x. That means 3 times. And we see it on different places in texts where we're reciting something, and so it says 3x at the end, so that means we do it 3 times. And recite that 3 times. Very simple. Okay, so we're going to stop there, and then we will go on to the second part of the Nundro practices starting next time. So with that, let's do some completion practices starting on page 6. First, we chant the mantra Om Ahom Shri. Om Ahom Shri, 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 Om Ahom Shri. Then long life prayers, first for His Holiness the Dalai Lama. For this realm, encircled by snow-covered mountains, you are the source of every benefit and bliss without exception. Tenzin Gyatso, you who are one with Avalokiteshvara, may you remain steadfast until samsara's end. Then His Holiness Khenchen Lama Rinpoche, in the Dharmadhatu, appearing as Amitabha, in the Sambhogakaya form as Wisdom Buddha Manjushri, Padmasambhava's heart son Sangha Yeshe, incarnated as Padmadana Lingpa in previous life and Palje Vadorje in this lifetime. May your life be longer than the duration of samsara, so that all your virtuous intentions can be accomplished. Please give me your heart blessings so that my mind is united with yours in the Buddha nature. So I pray. You understand the noble objects of samsara, great teacher. You have realized the intent of the sacred Dharma Yogi Kempo. Your Dharma practice is unification of the two. Kempo Dawa, stainless moon, may you live long. The wish for bodhicitta. Om Ahom Shri Ananta Benza Sarva Siddhi Pala Hom Ah. Glorious, precious root Lama, sit on the lotus seat on the crown of my head. With your great kindness, please accept me. Please bestow the realizations of body, speech, and mind. In all the activities of the glorious Lama, may no wrong view arise even for a moment. By the devotion of seeing whatever he or she does as perfect, Lama enter my mind. Throughout the succession of my lives, from the perfect Lamas, may I never be separated, and enjoying the glory of the Dharma, perfect all the qualities of the stages in the paths, and swiftly attain the stage of Vajradhara. The Lamas who have become the glory of the Dharma, may their lives be stable, may the land be entirely filled with doctrine holders, may the wealth and power of the patrons of the doctrine increase, and may the auspiciousness of the doctrine remain forever. Bodhicitta, the excellent and precious mind, where it is unborn, may it arise, where it is born, may it not decline, but ever increase higher and higher. Om Mani Padme Hum Shri. Om Mani Padme Hum Shri. Om Mani Padme Hum Shri. I dedicate the merit of this practice for the benefit of all sentient beings. I dedicate the merit of this practice for the benefit of all sentient beings. I dedicate the merit of this practice for the benefit of all sentient beings. Thank you. So, a couple of quick announcements. So we have our Wednesday practice will be coming up here, and we will be doing Amitabha, I believe, this week. No, we did Amitabha last week. We're doing. Wait a minute.
No, we did Guru.
We did Guru Rinpoche, so we're doing Amitabha this next week, sorry. And so that is at 6 o'clock on Wednesdays, and it's about half an hour to 40 minutes of practice. And so join us for that. And then also we have our Sunday meditation hour that we're doing, and then we have started the Essentials of Tibetan Buddhism, and so we are on the 7th of that sequence of classes on Dzogchen, and so that one meets at 1 o'clock here at Sunday, so we have a little lunch break, and then we are starting that practice. We've done 1 week of that now, and so we're starting the second week, but you could still join us if you are have some, at least you need to really have some background in Tibetan Buddhism in order to be able to do that appropriately, but there is no specific prerequisite. So those are the current practices that we are doing. I do want to also mention that we are watching the new variant, the Mu variant. I know everybody's still talking about the Delta variant right now, but they're still trying to figure out what might happen with that variant, and so we're watching very carefully to see what kind of information that they come up with as a part of that. And we're hoping we don't have to shut down again like we did last year, but just to let you know that is a possibility depending on how that develops and what happens with it, how the vaccine works with it, and so forth. But it is in Pima County now, so we do need to watch it. So please abide softly and deeply in pure awareness, with loving kindness and compassion for all, always and always. Thank you again.